Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a Coffee, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now we are joined by Click OK, Neil, Sensual Goat, One Deck, Refracted Curvature, who's dipping in and out, and a whole bunch of people in the Flat Earth Debate Discord server. So, welcome one and all.
How are you?
Very well.
Hello. Good morning.
Hello. Good to have you all. So, off the back of a discussion last week with DJ One Deck, shout out to him. I've just put several of his shortened and lengthier versions of his song that he did in last week's Friday show called If Earth Was a Giant Roast Chicken. So check that out. As I say, I've released a shorts version, a shortened version, and a full-length version. So you can check those out. Big shout out to him for making the song that I could make those with. So DJ One Deck suggested that in future shows, now being that future, we shouldn't necessarily cover our anti-flat earth opponents when it comes to some of their positions that they have to lie about. So today I came across a SciManDans thumbnail that had quotes with my face, and the quote was words that hadn't crossed my lips. Or to put it another way, Dan seems to have no option but to just lie about things I haven't said rather than actually address the things I do say. So in the case of SciManDans' most recent response, I can already tell the angle that he'll be taking in that regard with the lie in quotes that I didn't say on his thumbnail. And it'll be about elevation angle measurements made by SciManDans 1,000 times with his participating audience measuring Earth flat. Quote, SciManDans, we don't only measure Earth flat, end quote, SciManDans after measuring Earth flat 1,000 times. Now that's a verbatim quote that's actually crossed Dan's lips. That's so much of making those words up, like Dan seems to feel the need to do in his thumbnails. Now, it seems you've got to lie to be a globe believer, because in this particular instance, I'm agreeing with Dan. I'm leaning into the measurements he made off a flat Earth. They're elevation angle measurements that he and his audience measured 1,000 times, but rather than getting irritated and drawing attention to SciManDans, in this instance, we're going to be covering something slightly different, or covering that aspect of our opponent's suggested globe Earth proving flat Earth measurements from a different perspective. So today, in case you haven't figured it out from the title, we're going to be covering a videographer who's got a lot more subscribers than Dan called eHowEducation. And the title of the video is called How to Find the Angle of Elevation of the Sun Using the Shadows of Objects. And then it's got a colon, physics and math. So that's what we'll be covering today. But we don't want to do that too quickly. We've got to have a little bit of a build-up. So we'll have a discussion about how things have gone over the weekend before we do get into eHowEducation and the PhD explaining precisely how Dan measured Earth flat 1,000+ times with the help of his audience. So we'll get to that shortly. Any comments before we do, though? Hopefully we'll have a decent conversation about anything that's happened or occurrences over the weekend. We don't have to launch straight into SciManDans, but I just want to get it in the intro, so to speak, so that people know what's coming up on today's Flat Earth Debate.
Well, speaking of angles, on yesterday, one of my favorite football players got his ankle flipped in an angle that it's not supposed to be in and is out for the season. Devastating. It was horrible to see on TV. The kid was so full of life, Cam Scatterboo, and that's it. Season over, maybe career over.
Heartbreaking. I'm sorry to hear that. I laughed because you said an angle that wasn't supposed to be how it was supposed. That made me laugh, and not that the pain of some football players going to be laughing.
No, it's not supposed to go that way.
I'm sure.
When you see it live, it's like, oh my goodness, that's not supposed to look like that.
Have we all had a good weekend?
Just regarding the elevation.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go
Nathan.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, once somebody knows what an elevation angle is, its definition, and what's included in the elevation angle, as in the horizontal plane the observer's standing on, horizontal baseline, to get the elevation angle, you wouldn't want to be using that to then go ahead and describe how it would be an impossibility to measure a curve baseline, because it's not included in any of that aspect of what it is, if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Sure. Well, we'll read out a few definitions as we go along. So I'll start with the most popular one, or my favourite, which is sustainable by design. The altitude angle, open brackets, sometimes referred to as the solar elevation angle, close brackets, describes how high the sun appears in the sky. The angle is measured between an imaginary line between the observer and the sun and the horizontal plane the observer is standing on. Sustainable by design, altitude angle.
So there you go. So the horizontal part of obtaining that elevation angle does require a horizontal plane that the observer's standing on.
Yes.
Now, if you're on a globe, Earth, because that's what you've been taught and told, and then you go out and measure these angles, which could be distances, an angle, you're going to be standing on a horizontal plane, correct? That's what it's just told us. You're going to be using that horizontal plane for the elevation angle.
Yeah.
It's not curved.
Exactly. It's measured from the horizontal. I mean, I'll give you another definition of it. This one's from PV Education. The elevation angle, used interchangeably with altitude angle, is the angular height of the sun in the sky measured from the horizontal.
So again, horizontal. Now, horizontal isn't curved. I mean, I have heard. I'm not asking that because I know it's not. But this is some of the responses you get from people who, when you're explaining this measurement of Earth across Earth, distances along the points of that horizontal baseline, sometimes in the region of 5,400 miles, they'll tell you, well, a horizontal's curved. But it can't be curved because you've just acquired an elevation angle, which requires a horizontal baseline. So at no point in that measurement have you used or utilized a curve.
Yeah, the reference direction is 0 degrees. Do you want another one? Measurement of elevation angle. This is by Radar Tutorial. Elevation angle is the angle between the horizontal plane and the line of sight measured in the vertical plane. The reference direction, i.e. an elevation angle of 0 degrees, is a horizontal line in the direction of the horizon. Radar Tutorial, elevation angle measurement.
That's a great one, because it's not only going over that and confirming the horizontal, it's also utilizing the horizon, which we know is an apparent place, not a place. It's defined as an apparent location, but it does use the surface of the Earth for that apparentness, where the sky and the surface of the Earth appear to meet. So it is referencing the surface of Earth, and now we're using it to also, in line with the horizontal plane that we're standing on, to obtain the elevation angle. So it all ties in really, really well.
Yes.
I like that one.
So this one is the same for all of the definitions, but what we have on screen now, I think I'll pause this so it stays on screen for the duration of the show. What we have on screen now is what was measured by SciManDan and his audience. What we have on screen is an elevation angle measurement of the sun. Now, this is why Dan has to lie about me and put words that have not crossed my lips about things not being debunked on his thumbnail. Gotta lie to Glurf. Because what I actually say is this is what SciManDan and 1,000 plus participants of his measured. It is an elevation angle measurement from surface level of the sun. And in order to measure surface level as part of the angle, Earth can only be measured flat. That's what I actually say. Maybe put this in quotes. SciManDan measured Earth flat with an elevation angle from surface level. End quote. That's what I actually say. Why? Because it's a statement of fact based on what was measured by 1,000 of Dan's participating audience members. This is what they measured. Earth as a flat plane because it formed part of the angle measurement. Now, I'm in no doubt, because I'm not going to even watch Dan's video. I saw his thumbnail and went, oh, right, Dan's got to lie about me, has he? What a shame. Now, I don't have to lie about Dan when I say you and your reference frames are ruined, end quote, SciManDan. Again, that's a verbatim quote out of Dan's spastic lips when he stutters his way around destroying his own reference frames. Or, quote, we don't only measure Earth flat, end quote, stuttery SciManDan, after measuring Earth flat 1,000 plus times, utilising this. That's surface level to form part of the angle measurement. These are statements of axiomatic fact used by Dan and his audience to measure Earth flat. It can't be anything else. Now, these are the words I actually say. Putting words I haven't said in quotes and then putting my face on a thumbnail just makes me want to call Dan an egregious scumbag, disingenuous, lying glurf, because that's precisely what he is when he puts quotes around words I haven't said. But I'll repeat what I do say. Dan measured Earth flat. It's an elevation angle prerequisite that you will and do use and utilize surface level, that's flat, as part of the angle measurement to the sun, with sticks and shadows. Dan measured Earth flat 1,000 times and then said, we don't only measure Earth flat, because he's measured Earth flat. Now, there's no escaping this fact. And this fact will become more simplistic and more predominant as time progresses, as I explain it to all audiences who'll listen, that aren't separated from us through censorship. But if you're listening, Earth is measured flat by everyone and without exception. Even the people that think they're measuring to prove a ball will and can only measure Earth as a horizontal, planar surface. For example, surface level, sea level, flight level, eye level. All of these axiomatic principles are parallel with one another. all parallel with the plane of the horizon. That's how Earth is measured. And when SciManDans goes out to measure Earth with an angle, this is the angle he measures from surface level. It can't be bent, or it wouldn't be an angle. You don't have part of the elevation angle from surface level bending, because then it's not an angle anymore. And you can't apply trig. You can't apply an angle. You can't put a little degree symbol next to a number if one of the lines is bent. But what do you measure? Lying glurf scumbags that need to misquote me on your thumbnails. Well, you measure Earth flat. Now, what are you going to do to get around this? Well, you'll suggest that level's not level. Level isn't having no part higher or lower than another. Level is actually curved. A deviation from level that could only be described if you got a level to describe the curve from. But level isn't level, it's curved according to people who have their flat Earth prerequisite measurements pointed out to them. Well, level isn't really level. Oh, really? Well, show me in this 1,000+ utilised elevation angle measurement where the curve is, because when you do, you'll find yourself in what I call the hard place, where you have to toss to the curb your use of an angle. That would be an elevation angle measurement from surface level, as I've just defined 3 times and have diagrammatically represented on screen here. This is what Dan's audience actually measured. They all measured Earth flat. That's why Dan needs to lie about things I haven't said about debunking things. No. I'm agreeing with you, Dan. Well done. You measured elevation angles 1,000+ times with the help of your audience. What's an elevation angle? Well, let's have a few more definitions, shall we, of what an elevation angle measurement is? Maybe this one. This one's from Formulas, Definitions and Examples. Angle of elevation. The angle of elevation is the angle between the horizontal line and the line of sight above the horizontal line. It is formed when an observer looks upwards. And then it gives an example. Suppose you're standing at the terrace of a building looking upwards at the sky or at the sun or moon. The angle thus formed between your height from ground level and the line of sight formed is called the angle of elevation. Ergo, in order to measure this and call it an angle, you will require level ground to measure it from, otherwise known as surface level, ground level, sea level, parallel with flight level and eye level. These are axiomatic principles required to call your measurement, made by Dan and his audience 1,000+ times, an elevation angle. What's elevation? A measurement from surface, level, for it to be an angle. So we're clear. Dan measured Earth flat 1,000 times. Quote, we don't only measure Earth flat, end quote, SciManDans. Yeah, you do. You only measured Earth flat 1,000 times. That's precisely what you did. Want a couple more? This one's from... let's have a look. Sustainable Blood Design, we've already had that one.
I'd say all hail King Dan then.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with his measurement because it can't be anything other than a flat planar surface, or you cannot call it an angle. One's from GCSE 2021 edition, Angles of Elevation and Depression. An angle of elevation is the angle from the lower object to the higher one, while an angle of depression is the angle from the higher object to the lower one. Both angles are measured with respect to the horizontal plane of the reference object. Like this on screen. there's a horizontal plane, and it forms part of the angle measured by Dan and 1,000 participants, his audience. So in conclusion, Dan and his audience measured Earth flat. Like all Earth measurements, there are no exceptions. We only measure Earth flat. And if you decide to defy the very principle of this angle measurement, then it's no longer an angle and you no longer have any measurements. That's why Dan has to lie about things I haven't said in quotes. Don't you, Dan? You gotta lie to believe you're on a ball when you're measuring Earth flat 1,000 times. What's that? We don't only measure Earth flat, end quote, SciManDan. That's a verbatim quote, Dan, unlike the lies that you put on your thumbnail. You do, though, only measure Earth flat. You only measured these elevation angles 1,000 times off a flat planar surface, Dan. That's how they're measured. It's an elevation angle, as defined about half a dozen times thus far by me. What about this one? The solar altitude, AS, measures the angle between the central ray from the sun and a horizontal plane contacting the observer. Or in Dan's case, 1,000 observers, all with horizontal planes contacting them to be a measurement of an angle. Now you can toss those measurements that Dan and his 1,000 participants made to one side because you believe the ground's curving. But axiomatically, the solar altitude measures the angle between the central ray from the sun and a horizontal plane contacting the observer. So you all, 1,000 participants, had a horizontal plane contacting you when you measured surface level for your angle. These are facts, flat Earth measurement facts, because, in case you hadn't picked up on it, it's not exactly subtle, Earth is and can only be measured flat. Exactly as demonstrated by Dan, which is why Dan's making repeated videos about me. He's a really big fan of Nathan Oakley, aren't you, Dan?
I mean, anybody can look at that diagram. A child, of some age can look at that diagram, and you could ask him, is there any curvature in that measurement? And there most definitely isn't any curvature being used for that elevation angle. There's no curvature being used whatsoever. And as for, the people like SciManDan, like you say, Nathan said this and Nathan said that. This isn't Nathan's dictionary on elevation angle measurements. This is just what an elevation angle is. Yeah. I mean, SciManDan did a great job because he's used surface of Earth as well. I mean, we've got, we do have measuring equipment, or there is measuring equipment out there like theodolites, sextants. They're designed to measure elevation angles. But you can use the surface of the Earth, which is what Dan did. So he was utilizing the surface of Earth for the horizontal baseline of the elevation angle, which is fantastic.
The previous definition was from desadia.com. This one's from Principles of Naval Ordnance and Gunnery. Quote, target elevation angle between the horizontal plane and the line of sight measured in the vertical plane through the line of sight. Positive angles are measured upwards from the horizontal plane. This is what was measured by SciManDan and his audience 1,000 times. It's this on screen. An elevation angle measurement to the sun. This is why Dan has to lie and put things in quotes that I haven't said about debunkings. No. I've not mentioned anything about debunking anything. What I have said is SciManDan measured Earth flat 1,000+ times. Then I quote his justification, which is, we don't only measure Earth flat, end quote, SciManDan. Again, a verbatim quote, something that Dan's actually said, as opposed to the glurf, scumbag, disingenuous lies putting quotes on Dan's thumbnail. Words I've not said. I'm agreeing with your measurements, Dan. Why would you need to lie when I'm agreeing with you? Dan measured thousands of elevation angles with the help of his audience. This is an elevation angle. I've just defined it 6 ways from Sunday. Shall we hear a PhD describe it? Who would like that, children?
Yeah, I think
Yes,
I'd like
please.
to hear some of another profession explain exactly what you're saying.
Hi, my name's Derek Hullinger. I have a PhD in physics, and I'm
Does SciManDan have a PhD in physics?
I don't think so.
Really? So this guy outranks Dan, who is, what's the word? A wanker. Wanker man, Dan, says Nathan says and puts bullshit words I haven't said in quotes. That makes him a disingenuous, lying wanker. This man is a PhD on a very large channel. Let's see what he's got to say.
going to explain how to find the angle of elevation of the
What, like Dan measured 1,000 times? Oh, wonderful.
sun using a shadow.
Like Dan did with his audience, like with a stick and a shadow? Excellent.
So, let's say the sun is shining on some beautiful day.
You're listening, SciManDan's audience. Let's pretend you measured the sun. Oh, you all did, 1,000 of you. Like this guy's describing, on a beautiful day with the sun visible. Wonderful. You're paying attention. Jolly good.
And let's say here's the ground right here.
What would
Uh-oh.
that be? Oh dear. Does that look curved? PhD man just drew a straight line. Now we know it's straight. It's gonna form part of an angle. So it can only be a flat surface level, like was measured 1,000 times by Dan and his 1,000 participants. A flat surface level for an angle, says this PhD scientist. So, Dan, you're going to tell me that you didn't measure Earth flat 1,000 times? Oh, no, you've already decided what you'll do. You'll put words I haven't said in a quote that I haven't said, because you're a liar. Meanwhile, PhD here says Earth is going to be measured flat.
And maybe
Just give
got
it,
a fence.
Nathan.
Yeah.
Just give that a J. Did he say ground? I just want to hear that again, whether he said ground level or surface
Tiny.
level or earth. Okay.
on some beautiful day. And let's say here's the ground right here. And maybe you've got a fence post right here. And let's say that you take out a ruler and you find out that that fence post is 3 feet tall.
This all sounding familiar, Dan's audience, when you measured your sticks and shadows for angles of elevation from surface level? You all measured Earth flat, as being described by this PhD. I mean, don't take my word for it. Take PhD physicist here and his word for it when he describes a measurement. I mean, this isn't science, it's maths. It's measuring. Earth, in this case, as a horizontal plane of reference for an angle.
And you take out another ruler. Well, before we talk about the shadow, actually, where would the shadow fall?
On a flat Earth, if you're going to measure an angle with the surface. That's where.
Well, it's pretty easy to figure that out.
Sorry, Dave. That shadow will. Let me correct me if I'm wrong. That shadow will be the horizontal baseline for the elevation angle. I take it. There's the measurement. Obviously, he's using the ground. It's horizontal, but he's going to measure the shadow to acquire the angle. I take it, which will be horizontal.
Yeah. I mean, a bit like Principles of Naval Ordnance and Gunnery say, target elevation angle between the horizontal plane and the line of sight measured in the vertical plane. So what have we got along the ground? We've got a horizontal plane, like was measured 1,000 times by Dan and his audience. So when I say Earth is, was, and can only be measured flat, PhD here absolutely affirms that which was measured 1,000 times by my opponent, Dan. The one lying about things I haven't said about debunkings? No. You measured Earth flat, Dan. Well done, Dan and his 1,000 participating audience members who unequivocally measured Earth flat for their angles.
Well, it kind of goes into what Refracted was saying earlier. Like, what else is he going to draw? His only experience is flat, and that's the only way it'll work.
It's the only way you can measure an angle. I mean, you can say, oh, no, actually, the ground's curving. Well, then it isn't an angle of elevation with respect to a horizontal plane the observer is standing on, end quote, Tasadia.com, or the horizontal plane contacting the observer, GCSE Maths, or Naval Ordnance and Gunnery, the elevation angle between the horizontal plane and line of sight measured in the vertical plane. These are principles, in fact, that are being measured by my opponent. The one that says Earth's curving. Well, I've got a question for Dan. Why on unholy hell are you measuring Earth flat if you believe you're on a ball? Why aren't you measuring it ball-shaped? I'll tell you why. Because Earth is flat. Exactly as it's measured by Dan and 1,000 participating audience members of his, who all measured a horizontal plane and the line of sight measured in the vertical plane. That's what they all measured. Earth flat with their sticks and shadows. That's what they did. That's why Dan now has to lie about things I haven't said.
I was just going to say, Nathan, sorry, before you go on. Yeah, I'd love Dan to look at this video now, the PhD explaining how to measure an elevation angle, what's required and how you do it, and sort of go over it and say, well, this isn't what you do, because you'll need a curved baseline. I mean, I'd like to just to go over it in detail and prove this PhD wrong. He can't, obviously, because this is the requirements of the elevation angle. This is what Dan used to measure his elevation angles and his 1,000 friends. I'd just like to hear him go over it,
well, here's the problem.
And try to explain.
Here's the problem. You see, Dan has said, quote, we don't only measure Earth flat, end quote. It's verbatim. And I say, we only measure Earth flat. And then I give an example where Dan's own audience has measured Earth flat 1,000 times. They only measured Earth flat. So, given that Dan says we don't only measure Earth flat, perhaps he could show with this PhD giving an example of his own measurements where this is in any way, shape or form not flat. Maybe Dan can explain that rather than misquoting me and lying about things I haven't said. Could he show us where this measurement isn't flat? Do you think you could do that, Dan, for me? Can you show me where this measurement by this PhD describing what you and 1,000 of your audience members measured isn't flat? Because I would suggest that Earth is and can only be measured flat. And the example I'd give would be you and your 1,000 audience members who all only measured Earth flat 1,000 times. So maybe you can show me where we don't measure it flat, because that's precisely what you did. You only measured Earth flat.
you just draw a line from the sun across the top of the fence post all the way to the ground like that. So in this case, that's how long the shadow would be. So let's say that that shadow was maybe 2 feet long at a certain.
2 feet long? Like, it's almost as though this gentleman is suggesting that 2 feet along the ground is a horizontal linear measurement of the surface. Yeah, that's surprisingly accurate because feet, meters, kilometers, miles, they're all horizontal, linear, flat earth only measurements when describing the ground, because we only measure earth flat when describing horizontal, linear, flat earth distances, as was done by SciManDans and his participating audience members. Feet in this application, that's earth measurement, are ipso facto a flat earth prerequisite. It's a horizontal, linear earth measurement. Earth, ladies and gentlemen, can only be measured flat. What's that you say? We've got hills and valleys? Yeah, if you describe a distance and then measure the rise over run, the run will be given in a horizontal, linear distance measurement. In this case, feet. 2 of them. Flat. Like any scaled up version all the way up to 2,500 miles used for trig by Red Rhetoric. These are prerequisite horizontal, linear, flat earth miles, and in this case, feet. That is how Earth is measured. Again, you can lie and say, no, the ground's really curving, in which case it won't give you an angle, and you can't apply feet to it. Like this PhD, not a lying shitbag called SciManDans, who stutters about our reference frames are ruined when trying to demonstrate how Earth's got 2 of them. What a clown. Or says we don't only measure Earth flat after measuring it flat 1,000 times, only to lie about things I haven't said. No. This is a respected PhD describing exactly how Earth is measured flat by SciManDans specifically for sticks and shadows.
I mean, just looking at that, Nathan, just at a quick glance of what's on screen there, you've got obviously a vertical stick at 3 foot, which will require a horizontal baseline for the vertical. You've got a 2 foot distance along a horizontal baseline. You've got the line of sight up to the... I mean, it's almost looking like a right angle triangle to me. I can't see the curvature in there yet.
That, and he hasn't said that though, so we can't be absolutely certain that is the case.
Day. The angle of elevation of the sun in this case is just this angle right here. Let's call that theta.
So theta, if Earth isn't flat, isn't an angle. So I mean, Dan and his 1,000 participating audience members can say, no, really, the ground's curving. Well, then it's not an angle. Now, you'd be shocked to hear it, but we've already got this position defined. It's called the hard place, where your measurements of Earth and its surface level for an angle aren't angles because the ground's curving. It's called the hard place, where you toss to the curb your own bleeding measurements because you don't like how flat Earth must be to measure them. What's that? We don't only measure Earth flat, end quote, SciManDans. Yeah, you do. You only measure Earth flat if you want to call it an angle. And you all did. Every single one of SciManDans' participating audience members all measured an angle from surface level. They all measured elevation angles. And PhD here knows for sure and without a doubt he's measuring Earth flat because he's describing it as an angle. So it can only be flat. Earth measurements, or they wouldn't be angles. Let's get that absolutely plain and clear. Earth can only be measured flat, because that's what Earth is. Flat. Exactly as measured by SciManDans and his 1,000 participating members of his audience.
Well, we could also draw that angle right here if we wanted to. It's the
Well, not if it's not a flat ground, you can't.
same angle. And you notice that this is a right triangle here.
Oh, well, that's definitely the last nail in the coffin, isn't it? A right angle triangle proving for sure and without a doubt that Earth is measured flat for this to be a right angle triangle. Bit like Red's rhetoric used in his trig with 2,500 miles of flat Earth horizontal linear distance measurements. That's what Earth gets measured as, at all scales with any distance across the Earth's surface. If you're going to apply trig or angles to it, exactly as we do. Now at this point, I'm going to point out that in order to believe you're on a ball, you derive radial values using this method. That's to say, in order to have a ball to believe in, you only measure Earth flat in order to extrapolate your ball belief from it. Earth is measured flat for you to believe you're on a ball.
And we can actually figure out what that angle is based on how tall this fence post is and how long its shadow is.
Only if we've got a flat surface level and perpendicularity with respect to surface level. And what do you know? We've got a right angle triangle proving for sure and without a doubt Earth is measured flat. And just to add insult to injury for any of the clowns that participated with Dan who believed they were somehow validating sphericity, Earth can only be measured flat. To call this a right angled triangle or an angle. That's how Earth is always measured without exception. Otherwise, why on earth would my bull-believing counterpart SciManDans, who has all of the views directed towards him, be measuring it in this fashion? He'd measure it curved, if it was curved. Instead, like all Earth measurements, Dan and his audience only measure Earth flat.
If you remember from trigonometry, the tangent of an angle is equal to...
Sorry, did he say tangent of an angle? He didn't say tangent of a curve angle, right? I didn't mishear him.
the length of the side opposite the angle, so in this case that's 3, divided by the length of the side next to the angle. So in this
Length of the side on the flat surface of Earth with right-angled triangles for trig? I see. So what he's essentially saying is we can only apply this to a flat Earth. That's correct. Earth's measured flat in all examples. Why else would my opponent measure Earth flat like this? Because that's how it's measured. Flat. In all instances and without exception. Now, people have told me over the last couple of months that this is just too simple. It can't be this simple, can it? Yeah, it can. Earth is measured flat by everyone, always and without exception. Now, over time, people will start realising that like anything in life that's true, it is simple. Why would it be complicated? We measure Earth flat because Earth is flat. Like we measure it.
In this case, that's 2. So the tangent of this angle is 3/2, or 1.5. So to figure out what that angle is,
We'll need a flat Earth surface level to be measured and a right-angled triangle plonked on top of it, or it won't be a measurement at all. That would be the hard place. Notice how he's not talking about sphericity. Notice how he's not talking about ball shapes. Notice how he's only talking about flat Earth surface level and trig. And angles off the surface level, as defined as an elevation angle. You know who measured these? SciManDans and his audience 1,000 times. I mean, it beggars belief when you think about it, while I'm being simultaneously told by my own side, that's flat earthers, that this can't be true. Well, then why is Dan using these measurements off a flat Earth then? That's what you've got to ask yourself. I'll answer it. It's because Earth is and can only be measured flat. That's why.
You use something called an arctangent or an inverse tangent. So the way we would write that on paper is just that the angle equals the arctangent of 1.5.
Only on a flat Earth.
And most calculators, especially scientific calculators, have a little ATAN button. That's an arctangent button. Or sometimes the button will say tan -1. It's the same thing. So all you do is you type in 1.5 and then you hit that button and it tells you what that angle is. So if we went ahead and did that in this case with the 3 and the 2,
then we'd be affirming that Earth has been measured flat for the surface level to give you the 3. And that's exactly how, let's just think of an example. Who did this recently? Oh yeah, SciManDans did it 1,000 times with a participating audience that all measured Earth flat. And not only did all of them measure Earth flat, they only measured Earth flat. I mean, unless you want to disbelieve PhD here, I mean, you can just throw out PhD scientists describing how Earth gets measured flat for angles, the same as SciManDans measured with 1,000 participating audience members. Now, thanks I'll give again to OneDeck for suggesting this is how we do things moving forward. We won't go to SciManDans' video where he puts egregious lies in quotes that I haven't said. Why would we want to go to some numbskull idiot who can't even speak properly when talking about reference frames he needs 2 of being ruined on Earth? You and your reference frames have been ruined, end quote. Stuttery SciManDans the clown. We've got PhDs who describe Dan's 1,000 participating audience members and their flat Earth requirement for an angle measurement of the sun with respect to the horizontal plane the observers were standing on. All 1,000 of them. All measuring Earth flat because we only measure Earth flat. But rather than directing people back to SciManDans, helping him where he's basically parasitical to all of the views that get directed to any flat Earth inquiry made on YouTube ever, I'm going to send my audience to this guy. So you can, tell him he's wrong? Tell PhD guy that, no, the curved ground. I've just noticed I got the 2 and the 3 wrong way around. It was 2 on the ground and 3 up in the vertical. Nevertheless, you can see from my chat, scrolling by, that a link to eHowEducation and the video, how to find angles of elevation, like the ones SciManDans and 1,000 participating audience members measured. That's a link to his video, scrolling by in the live stream chat. So please let eHowEducation know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me when utilising your video to show how you, me, and everybody who ever measures Earth with an elevation angle can and will only measure Earth flat. And any described defiance of this measurement would mean that you wouldn't be measuring an angle from surface level, like Earth is always measured. What's that? We don't only measure Earth flat. Yeah, we do, Dan. We only measure Earth flat. You and your 1,000 audience members measured Earth flat. They only measured Earth flat.
There's no way out of it, is it, really? I mean, look at, sorry, Nathan. There's no way out of this. I mean, we're not trying to, we're just telling the truth. The PhD is showing you the truth. That's an elevation angle on screen. If somebody says, well, the horizontal baseline is actually curved, well, it doesn't look curved, does it? It looks horizontal because it has to be horizontal to get the angle that is measured. It's very, very simple.
Yes, so simple that people want to criticise this as being too simple. But as I said earlier, the truth is simple and should be simple. If it's truthful, it shouldn't be complicated. You know what are complicated? Lies. Lies are complicated. Lies have things that defy the principle of the measurement built within them. For instance, level curves. No, that's a contradiction in terms. Level is having no part higher or lower than another, and if it's curving, then the only way to describe how curved it is to describe its deviation from level. So axiomatically, you have to bullshit your audience and lie to them with things that sound like violations of the law of non-contradiction, because they are violations of the law of non-contradiction, like level being curved. Meanwhile, level being level is what's actually measured. And it's not an argument, it's just a description of how Earth gets measured. In this instance, by 1,000 plus members of SciManDans' audience. What's that? You need to put in quotes things I haven't said, Dan. Yeah, you've got to lie to believe you're on a ball. After only measuring Earth flat 1,000 plus times.
Well, Nathan, good lies, they're wrapped up in truth. There's some truth in there, and they convolute it so much that you don't even see the lie.
Yeah, you have to be baffled with bullshit when you're being deceived. Make it so complicated that you can't see the wood for the trees. You can't see the truth wrapped up in the lie. The truth, on the other hand, is very simple, very easy to understand, very easy to comprehend. The truth in this instance is exactly as is being measured. The ground is flat, exactly as being measured. Now, that's not something that I need to argue about. That's just what's being measured here. A flat surface level, as defined 6 ways from Sunday before we got into this video. That's what the truth will always be. Simple, easy to understand, easy to digest. A lie, on the other hand, would apologise for the simplistic, awful truth that your belief is in contradiction with. That's to say, we don't only measure Earth flat. Well, you would never measure Earth flat, ever, if it was curving. You'd only measure it curving. But we only measure Earth flat in all circumstances. So for you flatties out there who say this is just too simple, I don't see how that's an objection. What, sniffing your own farts and arguing about complex stuff where you unpack the lies and deceit of your opponent after whistling past things like this? Flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle. Yeah, you'll have to whistle past the simplistic truth in order to sniff your own farts and have the complicated arguments that you're all so proud of on Flat Earth. Now me, I'm just going to point out the simple reality that we actually measure. It's flat. Earth's flat. We checked.
Nathan, I'd like to really... I'd love to listen to just a normal... we're talking about people in this arena who, because they, in a psychological dilemma that they want to be on this globe Earth thing, that they have to then change definitions of things like horizontal and angles. I would love to hear a legitimate person who's never really been into this argument, who just believes they live on a ball because that's what they've been told, and then we just tell them this is how this video is a demonstration of how, say, they claim the circumference of Earth was measured many, many years ago. And after going through it, I'd love to just hear their natural response, because the response should be, well, Earth can't be curved then.
Well, that's how it's defined, as in Tasadia.com. Altitude angle is the vertical angle between the projection of the sun's rays on the horizontal plane of Earth's surface.
I love that one. Yeah, it shouldn't be that Earth is not curved. Their immediate response should be, wow, Earth is measured flat.
Yeah, and we don't need to, as I've said, we don't need to argue about this. Yeah? It's not an argument. When we defy axioms, then we're violating the principles of the measurement of Earth as measured. Now, when we just describe how Earth's measured, it just ipso facto is measured flat. Now, like I say, for 10 years, we collectively have been whistling past the requirement to measure Earth flat and then arguing about complex subjects that ignore how flat Earth is measured by everyone. Now, we're not going to whistle past any of these flat Earth angles anymore. Why would we? You measure Earth flat. We measure Earth flat. Earth is measured flat. So we don't have to ignore the axiomatic principle. We can highlight it and stop there. So Earth's being measured flat in this particular example then? Yeah, it is, yeah. Okay, well, that's the end of the discussion then. Not, well, if we take this flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurement and then violate the base principle of the measurement, we can suggest we're measuring sphericity. No, you're not. You're measuring Earth flat, then calculating sphericity based on a violation of the measurement of Earth as a surface level, the horizontal plane of Earth's surface used in this measurement. So we're not going to do that. It's not something I'm going to argue about anymore. It's a fact of Earth measurement, whether you like it or not, whether you want to believe you're on a ball or not. Earth will and can only be measured flat. So who cares what you believe after we've measured Earth flat for circles of equal elevation to describe concepts like Polaris angle measurements for latitude, like areas of equal elevation, that's circles of equal altitude. That's to say a circle, two-dimensional, with all the same heights across it for vast areas of measured Earth. Like miles, linear and horizontal, like on the maps and scales. Like sea level and surface level, parallel to the plane of the horizon. Like flight level and eye level, parallel with surface level. These are the axioms that are used when measuring Earth, and Earth is measured flat.
I'm looking for the measurements of the Earth. Can you show me?
Yeah, it's on screen now. I've just covered it for the last hour.
This is a time waster. We know this voice.
I've just covered it for the last hour. 1,000 measurements.
Sorry to interrupt.
1,000 measurements from SciManDans of elevation angle measurements. It's been defined 6 ways from Sunday. It's on screen now for the live audience. Are you retarded? Were you dropped on your head? We've covered it for a straight hour. You complete idiot. My question, I'll repeat. My question, I'll repeat. Are you retarded? Were you dropped on your head? We have covered it explicitly for the last hour. Where are the measurements? On screen now. Are you an idiot?
I can't see the screen on Discord.
Well, then go away, you complete clown shoes. Go and look at the live stream with your train wreck of a mic with distortion all over it. You complete bonehead. You don't even know how to use a microphone. Shut your stupid globe-believing idiot mouth. We've covered it and defined it 6 ways from Sunday. You complete bonehead. You didn't answer my question. Were you dropped on your head? All we're getting is static from this complete retard who doesn't know how to plug a mic in correctly. Retard. Number 1, go and plug your mic in correctly. Number 2, we've covered elevation angle measurements of Earth's surface for the last straight hour. Number 3, you still haven't answered me. Were you a globe-believing idiot dropped on your head to be this dense?
First of all, I'm not a globe believer. And the second thing is, when you're talking about the elevation angles, it's not the measurement of the surface.
Really? Let's just define it from naval ordnance and gunnery. Target elevation angle between the horizontal plane and the line of sight measured through the vertical plane. What about Tassadia? Altitude angle is the vertical angle between the projection of the sun's rays on the horizontal plane of Earth's surface.
Okay, so
Okay, you fucking retards! You piss me off greatly. Now fuck off, get out of my show, you disingenuous globe-believing spastic. How fucking dare you?
What did he say?
Thing is, Nathan, just before he goes, Nathan, this is a great, well, this is an example just for the audience benefit. This is an example of an anti-flat. We've mentioned these in this show. This is where they go to now to tell you that the surface of your Earth isn't being used, when the PhD guys just told you that's what's being used. SciManDans used it. It's defined in the elevation angle definition. We've been through it with a professional person on it with a great channel. And now this is an example of an anti-flat earther.
I want him banned.
Saying that none of that is true. Everything that is on screen now is a lie. The horizontal baseline is not being used. Curvature is being used, but there's no curvature there to be seen. This is what we was explaining we have to deal with these people.
I'm absolutely fucking furious. I want this cunt banned permanently from this server. I do not want to lose my shit with lying bastard glurf believers. Why the hell should I have to define it when I've defined it 6 ways from Sunday already as being the horizontal plane of Earth's surface? For him to come in and say, no, it's not Earth's surface. What is this guy measuring on screen? He's the PhD with 1 million views describing this with the authority to say he's a scientist. And he's measuring the sun on Earth's surface with a shadow. I've defined it from the Navy handbook, and I've defined it from Tasadia and GCSE. These are educational bodies that are defining it as using Earth's surface. So this wanker comes in and says, number one, I'm not a globe believer. Lying bastard. Absolutely without question, glurf. That would be a globe Earth believer who's come here to lie to my audience and say it's not the surface when it's been defined as the surface 6 ways from Sunday. So what does he do? Comes in to undermine me by lying to my live audience. So I'm going to ask Righteous Force, have this, what's his name? Nexa permanently banned. Why in unholy fuck should we have to deal with this shit? Lying bastards coming and lying to our faces when we're defining what these things are, so they can come in and undermine me. How fucking dare you? Never return. I want this person permanently banned. Why should he come here to undermine what we've just spent an hour covering?
He shouldn't. His name is New Moon, too. You know who he is.
Well, he should be permanently banned. I don't want to ever talk to him again. Lying cunt. Get the fuck out of my show. How dare you? Piece of shit.
Yeah, we don't need to speak to him, really, but it was good just to have him prove what we're saying for 2 minutes. That's all we needed him for, to say that, pointing out that the surface of Earth isn't being used. Well, everybody's just been listening to that show in great detail of yourself, Nathan, us lot, and the PhD explaining that's exactly what's happening. And this is what you've got to do to glur.
Yeah, I've just defined it. The altitude angle is the vertical angle between the projection of the sun's rays on the horizontal plane of Earth's surface. What's this wanker cunt coming to tell my audience? It's not Earth's surface. Cunt! Get the fuck out of my show.
The PhD did not just explain it. Hold on one deck. He didn't explain. He drew it out and described everything that he was drawing. And he said, let's draw the ground. And he draws out a straight line.
Can someone get a message to my moderator of the server, that would be Righteous Force, and ask that Nexa and New Moon be permanently banned from this server? Why should I be put in this state of absolute outrage by lying bastards who believe they're on a globe? Why should we have to have the axioms and definitions violated by liars? Why should we have to put up with it? I mean, algorithmically, we'll have this type of behaviour favouritised by search engines. That's what actually happens. Liars get promoted above the truth and fact, even when their own measurements are defined as from surface level to be angles. They'll still lie and say, no, we're measuring from curve level. No, it's not the surface. Lying bastards.
So the elevation has nothing to do with the surface?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Is that what they're arguing?
Yes, that's what he said. Elevation being what? From the middle of space? No, elevation means specifically from the surface. It's an elevation angle measurement. Oh, it's not from the surface. I hate these people. Like, I despise this man. Why? Why should I be left in such fury? Because liars come to piss me off in the middle of a live show. Anyway, with that, I say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering Streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit me up on PayPal and Patreon and all that good stuff. Obviously, a massive thank you to today's Discord and Jeepers panels. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.